What if I told you the most expensive military failure in American history wasn't a broken fighter jet or a failed invasion, but a 23-year attempt to create real-life X-Men? From 1972 to 1995, the US government seriously believed they could train soldiers to kill enemies with their minds, spy on Soviet nuclear facilities through telepathy, and win the Cold War using supernatural powers. This isn't some conspiracy theory or Hollywood movie plot. This actually happened. The CIA and Pentagon spent over $20 million on something called the Stargate project, basically trying to turn the military into Hogwarts with security clearances. Today we're diving into the most ridiculous government program ever conceived, where grown adults in suits sat around conference tables seriously discussing how many psychic spies they needed to defeat communism. Picture this, it is the 1970s peak Cold War madness. The US and Soviet Union are locked in the ultimate toxic relationship, constantly paranoid about what the other side is plotting. Then American intelligence gets wind of something that makes nuclear weapons look boring. The Soviets are allegedly researching psychic warfare. The reaction from us officials was basically, wait, what, the Russians are trying to beat us with magic? Well, we need magic too. This logic was like hearing your neighbor bought a water gun and deciding you need a rocket launcher in response. CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency bigwigs actually sat in boardrooms with straight faces, discussing how to counter the Soviet psychic threat. Imagine these scenes. Middle-aged men in expensive suits seriously debating how many mind readers do we need and what is our telepathy budget. This was more absurd than any X-Files episode. The best part, American intelligence's knowledge of Soviet psychic programs came mostly from secondhand reports and rumors. Like a game of telephone mixed with conspiracy theories, each retelling made the Soviet psychic army sound more terrifying. By the end, us officials genuinely believed Russia had squads of psychic soldiers who could destroy American satellites with their thoughts. Under this paranoid atmosphere, in 1972, America officially launched the Stargate project, a top-secret program to develop supernatural military capabilities. The name alone sounds like a sci-fi movie, and honestly, the actual project was way crazier than any Hollywood script, recruiting the X-Men. When the military started interviewing psychics, step one of Stargate was recruiting people with special abilities. The military began a nationwide search for individuals claiming supernatural powers. This recruitment process was weirder than any modern tech company interview. Picture these job interviews. A stone-faced military officer sits across from applicants, seriously asking, "Please demonstrate your remote viewing abilities," then hands them a sealed envelope, expecting them to psychically reveal its contents. This interview style was definitely a first in HR history. The military eventually recruited about 20 remote viewers, people who claimed they could mentally see distant targets. This team's backgrounds were all over the place: retired soldiers, artists, housewives, and several self-proclaimed psychics. Basically, they assembled the Avengers if the Avengers were recruited from Craigslist. These psychic soldiers were stationed at a secret facility in Virginia, beginning formal supernatural combat training. Their daily job was literally sitting in small rooms, closing their eyes and trying to mentally observe military targets worldwide. The job description was essentially sit and daydream, $5,000 monthly salary. Even more ridiculous, the military created strict training programs and evaluation standards for these remote viewers. They had specialized instructors teaching how to enhance psychic abilities and standardized tests measuring clairvoyance accuracy rates. The professionalism level made you wonder if these officers actually believed magic was real, absurd missions, fighting the Cold War with mind powers. The missions assigned to Stargate's remote viewers sounded like superhero comic plots. They were tasked with psychically locating Soviet nuclear submarines, telepathically eavesdropping on Kremlin meetings, and even attempting to influence Soviet leaders' decisions through mental manipulation. One famous mission involved finding a missing Soviet Tuesday 95 bomber. Military remote viewers sat in Virginia offices, eyes closed, mentally scanning Siberia's vast wilderness to locate this aircraft. It was like using Google Earth satellite view, except they were using psychic maps. Another time, the CIA asked remote viewers to investigate Soviet military activities in Afghanistan. These psychic agents claimed they could see Soviet troop deployments and even hear Russian officers' conversations. Their submitted reports detailed Soviet base layouts and force compositions as if they'd actually been there. One of the craziest missions was attempting to kill enemies using psychic powers. Some remote viewers claimed they could mentally attack distant targets, even causing heart attacks through telepathy. The military actually believed this and requested supernatural assassinations of high-value targets. Most hilariously, these psychic missions had official military code names and classification levels. Remote viewers had to fill out standard military reports, documenting their supernatural reconnaissance results in detail. The bureaucratic formality made this absurd project look like legitimate military operations. Self-deceptive success stories when coincidences become miracles. During Stargate's 23-year run, the military claimed several remarkable successes. But analyzing these supposed success stories reveals they were basically coincidences, vague predictions, or hindsight bias dressed up as psychic victories. The most famous success was during the 1979 Iran hostage crisis. A remote viewer claimed he saw where American hostages were held, describing building details, when hostages were later rescued. The military found his description basically accurate. Problem was, his description was so vague it could apply to any government building in Tehran. Another hyped case involved locating Soviet nuclear submarines. Remote viewers claimed they successfully pinpointed several Soviet subpositions. But these successes were only verified after the US had already obtained the information through conventional intelligence. It is like predicting test answers after you already know the results. Most ridiculous were claims that remote viewers predicted major international events. Some allegedly foresaw the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Others claimed they predicted the Chernobyl disaster. But these predictions were either added after the fact or cherry-picked from thousands of vague guesses that occasionally got lucky. To prove the project's value, the military started using statistical tricks to demonstrate remote viewing effectiveness. They claimed remote viewers' accuracy rates were several percentage points higher than random guessing, therefore proving psychic abilities existed. This logic was like saying you have supernatural coin flipping powers because you got heads 10 times in a row. Though Stargate was highly classified, the scientific community gradually caught wind of the military psychic research. When real scientists learned the Pentagon was studying supernatural warfare, their reaction was basically a collective facepalm. Stanford Research Institute SRI was one of Stargate's main contractors, responsible for scientific research into remote viewing phenomena. But this research's scientific validity was extremely questionable. Experimental designs were full of holes. Data analysis was biased, and conclusions were completely far-fetched. Real scientists reading these reports felt like watching someone use astrology to predict stock markets. Most absurdly, SRI researchers designed bizarre experiments to prove remote viewing effectiveness, like having psychics see through sealed boxes or remotely observes randomly selected locations. Results were always ambiguous, but researchers always found ways to explain why this proved psychic abilities existed. Mainstream scientific opinion was that supposed remote viewing phenomena could be completely explained through psychology and statistics. Human brains naturally seek patterns and connections, finding meaning even in random events. Add confirmation bias and selective memory, and anyone can believe they have supernatural powers. Worse, Stargate's research methods violated basic scientific principles. No proper control groups, no double-blind experiments, no peer review. The whole project was more like a massive self-deception experiment than serious scientific research. But the military obviously didn't care about scientific skepticism. They kept funding the project, kept believing remote viewers' supernatural intelligence. This disregard for scientific method made the entire project even more absurd. Internal doubters when officers started questioning what they were doing as time passed. Even within the military, people began questioning Stargate's value. Some project participants privately admitted they had serious doubts about the program's scientific validity and practical usefulness. Project managers started noticing that remote viewers' intelligence accuracy wasn't really better than random guessing. Worse, this supernatural intelligence never played decisive roles in actual military operations. All important intelligence still came from traditional espionage, satellite reconnaissance, and signal interception. One unnamed former project officer later recalled, "We spent millions of dollars having people sit in rooms daydreaming, then treated their nonsense as intelligence analysis. It was criminal waste of taxpayer money." More hilariously, internal faction fighting broke out within the project. Some remote viewers claimed others were fake, insisting only they possessed real psychic abilities. This infighting made the entire project even more chaotic and ridiculous. Military analysts began privately mocking remote viewers' reports. They gave these reports various nicknames like Magic Intelligence and Crystal Ball Reports. But in official settings, they still had to seriously consider this supernatural intelligence, which many found extremely absurd. By the late 1980s, internal skepticism grew louder. Some senior officers began questioning the necessity of continuing investment in this project. But due to its classified nature and political sensitivity, nobody dared publicly suggest terminating the program. Cold War ends. Magic fails. Reality finally defeats fantasy in 1991. The Soviet Union collapsed, officially ending the Cold War. This historic event not only changed world dynamics, but also eliminated Stargate's reason for existence. Without the Soviet psychic threat, the US military could hardly justify training supernatural soldiers anymore. Worse, as the Cold War ended, the US government began cutting military budgets, with all projects facing funding pressure. Under these circumstances, questionable programs like Stargate naturally became prime candidates for elimination. In 1995, the CIA commissioned the American Institutes for Research, AIR, to conduct an independent evaluation of Stargate. The assessment results could only be described as devastating. The evaluation report stated that 23 years of remote viewing research produced no valuable intelligence, and supposed success stories could all be explained by coincidence and statistical error. The report's conclusion was brutally direct. There is no credible scientific evidence for remote viewing phenomena. Continued investment in this project is a waste of resources. This conclusion was basically a death sentence for Stargate. In 1995, the Stargate project was officially terminated. This supernatural military program that lasted 23 years and cost $20 million finally reached its end. Participating remote viewers were disbanded, related facilities closed, and massive research files archived and sealed. After termination, some former participants began publicly discussing their experiences. Their memoirs and interviews revealed the project's absurd details, giving the public their first glimpse into how the US government had seriously tried to train psychic soldiers. Post-declassification comedy gold when classified documents become meme material in 2017, the CIA declassified massive amounts of Stargate documents, which immediately became internet comedy gold. Netizens discovered these serious military reports were filled with absurd content more bizarre than any science fiction novel. One report detailed how remote viewers remotely observed Mars' surface, claiming to discover ancient civilization ruins. Another documented experiments attempting to bend spoons with psychic powers. Yet another claimed remote viewers successfully established telepathic contact with extraterrestrials. Most hilarious was a research report on psychic assassination. The report seriously analyzed the feasibility of killing enemies with mental powers and proposed various supernatural combat tactics. Reading this felt like a military version of Harry Potter. Netizens began creating parody content, mixing real Stargate documents with sci-fi movie clips. These parody videos went viral on social media, introducing more people to this absurd historical event. Some former project participants also began sharing their experiences on social media. Their recollections were full of self-deprecating humor, showing people the ridiculous reality behind this serious military project. More interestingly, some netizens started applying to join modern versions of Stargate. They posted their psychic resumes online, claiming abilities to mentally hack computers or see through phone screens. This parody made Stargate eternal internet comedy material. The Stargate story provides deep insights about government decision-making, scientific method, and human psychology. This project proved that even the world's most powerful government can make completely absurd decisions. First, this project demonstrated the dangers of Cold War paranoia. When two superpowers fall into extreme suspicion, any ridiculous threat might be taken seriously. The US government spent millions researching psychic powers because they believed the Soviets were doing the same. This arms race logic can extend to any field, including completely fictional ones. Second, Stargate exposed confirmation bias's powerful influence. When people want to believe something, they unconsciously seek supporting evidence while ignoring contradictory evidence. Project participants always found proof of psychic abilities in random events, showing how skilled human brains are at self-deception. Third, this project highlighted the importance of scientific method. Without rigorous experimental design and peer review, any research can reach wrong conclusions. Stargate's research violated basic scientific principles, therefore reaching absurd results. Most importantly, Stargate reminds us to maintain critical thinking about government projects. Even the most authoritative institutions can make stupid mistakes. Public oversight and transparency are the best ways to prevent such ridiculous programs. In today's information age, we still see similar phenomena. Various conspiracy theories and pseudoscientific ideas spread online, some even influencing government policy. Stargate's lessons remind us that critical thinking and scientific literacy are more important than ever. There you have it, folks, how the US government blew $20 million trying to create real-life X-Men. From training psychic assassins to telepathically spying on Soviet nukes, the Stargate project was definitely the weirdest government program in history. This story proves that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction, and government secrets are more ridiculous than conspiracy theories. Next time you think a government decision is stupid, remember Stargate. At least they're not trying to train you to kill people with your mind. Want more mind-bending historical truths that'll make you question reality? Hit that subscribe button, because next week we're exploring how the CIA tried to control minds with LSD, and yes, that actually happened too. Until then, keep questioning everything, because in this world the truth is always weirder than whatever you can imagine.